Yep, there it is. The it doesn't look too bad from 10 feet away, but I'm not real happy with the urethane. It's got a kind of a plasticky feel. Surprise! It's covered in plastic, for crying out loud. But I like the sheen. I didn't like it was semi-gloss urethane, and I just um, used an ultrafine Scotch Brite to knock the shine off. But you know, I put the handguard, the rings that hold the handguard on, and it just peeled the urethane right off there, and actually had a piece of the stock break out here too. So I wasn't happy about that. And you know, one of the reasons why I went ahead and did this, I just wanted to experiment with it more than anything else. But you know, the Russians really didn't care too much about the quality of the wood that they use. They, you know, the way I understand, the Arctic birch is a prominent species, and there's plenty of it, and it is pretty stable in extremes, especially in extreme cold. But they didn't spend any time, and this is indicative of the Cold War era and the Soviet era. They really didn't spend any time in really take any. I'm speculating. I don't know any Russians personally, but if you don't have an economic stake in what you're doing, if you're just a cog in the wheel, you tend to just go with emotions, and instead of putting that craftsmanship and pride into what you're building, kind of the American way where you take pride in what you do, and you invest a little bit of yourself in it. In comparison, you look at this stock and it doesn't look too bad, but it's kind of an ugly piece of wood. In comparison, here's my 50s vintage restored Remington 878. I restored this stock shortly after I bought it. I bought this gun in '91, and one of the first things I did was refinish the stock. And it had a lacquer finish, and I stripped it, and what you see is just the wood. I mean, it's rubbed with linseed oil, like 9 coats of it. And I rubbed that oil in with my hands, and so I sanded everything out of it, sanded as much of the blemishes out as I can. It's got some field rash in it. I mean, there's a dent there, and there's one up over here, and it's not perfect, but it's not supposed to be. It's a hunting gun. But if you look at this piece of wood, the guys that selected the wood, and this is walnut, it's a little darker species. But the guys that actually selected the wood took time and selected it based on the grain, the orientation of the grain, and how it looked. There was an aesthetic to it. And if you look at this piece of wood here, I don't know how well this camera's picking it up, but it's nice, tight grain. There's no knots. There's no imperfections in the wood itself. And I don't know how many rounds this gun has gone. I've put a lot of rounds through this. I used to skeet shoot all the time with this. This was my primary small game gun for many years, and I ran a lot of rounds through this. I've never had a hiccup. And about 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago, I sent it off and had the receiver and the barrel re-blued, so it looks like new. But in comparison, this gun looks a lot better than this does. And I purposely bought this gun originally to kind of butcher it. I kind of wanted to turn this into some kind of a fugly stick. But I wanted to keep it in its original form, as close to its original form as possible for as long as possible. And there were, a couple of things. I wanted a long gun, and it's plenty long. And I wanted a bolt action, and I wanted something that I could build on, and I wouldn't have to worry too much about destroying its value. I mean, there's something like depending on who you talk to, there's 30 million of these things, and for you diehard collectors out there, you should thank me. I'm doing you a favor. I mean, by destroying this thing, I'm making yours worth more. So shut the hell up. But anyway, I put the I mentioned in my other video, I put the padded recoil, put a new recoil pad on it instead of just the metal butt plate, and that keeps the bruising down to a minimum on my shoulder. And the pistol grip allows me to draw that gun tighter into my shoulder, so there's not as much impact on it. And I like this pistol grip, and for two reasons. Number one, it pisses off the purists. Number two, it turns it into an assault rifle. And I say that tongue in cheek. Somehow this gun is now more dangerous with a pistol grip on it than it was before. But anyway, like I said, I'm not real happy with the finish. I haven't fired it yet since I refinished. I'm going to assume that that urethane is probably going to go soft when I run 60 or 70 or 80 or 100 rounds through it. It's going to get hot and it's going to melt. So this is probably going to get restripped, and I'm kind of toying with the idea. I might just go ahead and stain this thing black, just because it's an ugly piece of wood. And I went to the gun store this weekend, and I was actually looking at a couple of 9130s at a local store here, not the store that I bought this one at, but there's another store here in town. And they got two 9130s and two Chinese variant M44s, and the M44s didn't have any numbers matching anything. Numbers didn't match. If you look at these 9130s, the numbers match here, here, here. The barrel, the bolt, the floor plate, and the butt plate, they should all have numbers match. Now, if your numbers don't match here and here on the butt plate and on the magazine, well, the floor plate, that's not really a big deal. I mean, obviously you want one that, especially if you're a collector, you want one with numbers matching. But if the bolt doesn't match the barrel number, be wary. Be very wary. You need to have a gunsmith check the head spacing before you start shooting it. But yeah, I'm rambling again. The other thing I want to do to this gun is put a bipod on it, and really because of this cleaning rod, with the cleaning rod in place, the only place to put a conventional bipod is somewhere in here to get like a sling lug. I got my 44 Magnum here. This sling lug here. In order, to get some, a lot of the bipods, they have a clasp that clasps onto this, and you tighten down on this. The only place to put that is right here, somewhere in here. And that's kind of, far back on the gun to put a bipod. You want to have the bipod closer to the end of the rifle. But having it clear out on the end of the rifle isn't practical either. So thought about mounting like a Picatinny rail on here, and kind of having either trying to manufacture something myself or having a machinist make a kind of a clamp. But I also want a floating barrel, and one of the things I was putting this thing together, and I noticed that the wood is making contact with the barrel somewhere in here. And not that that's a big deal. I don't think it's going to affect the accuracy. But I've seen guys sporterize these things and chop the stock off right around here, and then reform this and make, have all this barrel open, which would probably aid in cooling. And then I thought about doing that, and then in somewhere in here, getting a clamp on Picatinny rail, like a quad rail setup that clamps over the barrel, and I can mount a bipod to that, and like a flashlight or a laser, or another scope ring, or a scope ring. I keep saying scope ring. Another sling. mount. So, but for right now, I'm going to leave it as it is until I acquire some more parts. But this is kind of the look I was going for. This kind of satin look. It's just, this is really an ugly piece of wood. It's not. It looks better on this side than on this side. And then in comparison to the Remington, you got the browning here, and this is done in a gloss finish. And this is more of a show gun, a little 20 gauge pump. And I got this probably 15 years ago. You'd hate me if you knew what I paid for this 15 years ago. But probably less than 50 rounds put through that. That's like a brand new gun. But there's the mosin. I got a cheek riser, kind of a tactical kind of canvas dealio with a bag on the side of it. It laces on here. I'm going to try that for right now, and still haven't made a decision on what type scope mount, but it's looking like I'm going to go with either something that's drilled and tapped right to the receiver here, or something that takes the place, basically a short eye relief scope, something that comes out to here instead of a scout scope. But for right now, this gun is going to remain in this form, the stock is, until I figure out what I'm going to do with this down here. But I might just go ahead and pick up another one of those 9130s to leave alone. So the next Rocky Mountain gun show coming up here, I think, is the end of this month, the end of May, and let's see if that one vendor still has those hex receiver mosin M44s for sale. Hopefully, I should have pulled the trigger on that. Those were nice looking guns. But that's really the, if I get another mosin, when I get another mosin, I'm going to get another 9130 that's in really good shape, and I'm just going to leave it alone. It doesn't have to be a hex receiver, but it does have to be pre-war. And I'm looking at I think this one's a Tula gun, and I forget how to pronounce the other one. Starts with an I. I don't speak Russian. I speak American. But yeah, the other gun store has the 9130s from the other armory, the other Russian armory, and those look like they've never been issued. The bluing on the barrels is pristine. There's no wear marks on them. They're still slathered in cosmoline. They come with the sling and the bayonet and the oil can and the cleaning kit, and for about the same price I paid for that one. The advantage to buying that one for what I paid for it, I got half of the cleaning kit and an oil can. There's what the oil can looks like. There's different variants of that. But most of the cosmoline was, with the exception of the cosmoline that was impregnated in the wood, the gun store owner actually cleaned the gun. So it was a kind of a buy it and shoot it scenario. You didn't have to take it home and clean it first. If you ever clean cosmoline, it's not very fun. But anyway, that's the mosin for now. But just waiting on some parts. I might see what's going on here in the next couple of weeks, and give you an update on that mosin. But in the meantime, if you got them, shoot them, right? I like this little gun. Need to get some. Isn't that pretty? That is a beautiful gun. I like that gun. My dad has a J.C. Higgins 12 gauge that he bought when he was 17 years old, or he might have been 15 when he bought that gun, and it was a used gun when he bought it, and I fell in love with that gun, and I would shoot it at every opportunity. And one day I borrowed that gun to go skeet shooting, and me and my friends, we went out skeet shooting for about 5 hours. I think between the two of us, we shot a couple cases of. I know we shot at two full boxes of clay pigeon, and I don't know. I remember this was a long time ago. I don't remember how many rounds we ran through it, but I think it was pretty close to 500. And my dad asked me, "How many rounds you run through that gun?" I said, "I don't know, 400 or 500 rounds." He goes, "You get your own gun, you're gonna wear mine out." And I don't think he's fired it maybe 2 or 3 times since then. But yeah, I've only seen an example of this once in the 20 years that I've had this gun. Every time I go to a gun show, and every time I go to a gun store that has used guns for sale, I'm always looking for an 878. And the only place I've ever found another example of an 878, I know there probably got to be thousands of these things around, but the only time I've ever seen one was in 2003. I think it was 2003, 2002, 2003. We were working in Monroe, Michigan, and we were staying at a hotel right across the street from Cabela's. And we went over to Cabela's, and they had one. This was 10 years ago, they wanted $250 for it. That's about all they're worth, really. But this is the predecessor to the 870. Or the 870 or the 30, I don't remember. I think the 870 is a pump, and I don't remember anymore. It's been a long time. Doggone it. That's my little pride and joy. I like this gun like my dad likes that J.C. Higgins. But enough of my blithering idiocracy. That's the mosin. I'll give you an update on that in the future as it progresses. That's probably going to turn into one ugly gun. I'll tell you what. But in the meantime, rate, comment, and subscribe. And please have a pleasant day. All right? Bye now. Be safe out there.